Behind me is the Audi e-tron GT, and in this video I'm going to do a comparison between this car, the e-tron GT, and the RS Etron GT because I've driven both of them. We'll also take this for a drive and I'll give you my thoughts on whether or not you should buy one of these cars. So without further ado, let's talk about this car and then get into the comparison. So then we have the e-tron GT. What do we need to know about this thing? Well, let's start with the kind of high level facts and figures. This car comes in at £83,000. It has 470 PS, 640 Newton meters of torque. This will do 0 to 60 2 miles per hour in just 4.1 seconds. It has a top speed of 152 miles per hour. This one here is in a very nice Ascari blue. Now this is a £950 option. It also comes with 20-inch wheels. The car weighs 2,300 kilos. It's a big, heavy car. In terms of its battery, it's a 93 kilowatt hour battery with 83 kilowatts of usable battery power. So overall, it is a very nice looking car. I've always thought the e-tron GT looks the part. I think it looks nicer than its Taycan counterpart. And yeah, in terms of its base form, it still looks extremely good. Although I think the RS version looks a lot better. So what about this compared to its RS variant? What are the differences? Well, let's start with performance. The RS Etron GT has a much more powerful electric motor, and it will go from 0 to 62 miles per hour in just 3.1 seconds. That's a second quicker than this one. It has 598 PS compared to this one, the base one, which has 470. In terms of its exterior design, the RS Etron GT has a much more sportier and aggressive design compared to the base. It features a much different, a different front bumper and grille. It has a different rear diffuser, as well as larger wheels and a lower ride height. Now, in terms of its interior differences, the RS Etron GT comes with sport seats, the RS Sportline seats, which are with carbon fiber trim, whilst this base model has leather seats and kind of the base trim, really. The RS variant also has larger wheels. It comes with 21-inch wheels, and it also has a lower ride height to the e-tron GT. Now, in terms of its range, this is where it gets interesting. So both models have the same battery capacity, but the RS Etron GT has a larger motor. So in terms of the range, this one here, the base level GT, has a range of up to 298 in terms of its WLTP cycle. But being honest, I've not ever seen more than 230. Whilst its RS Etron GT its RS Etron GT counterpart has a WLTP of 283 WLTP. But again, when I had it, I didn't see any more than 200 odd miles. So in terms of I'm not entirely sure how they measure these cars in terms of WLTP range, but you definitely won't get what they say on paper. Now, what about the price? Because the base spec comes in at 79,000 base or 80 grand base, whereas the RS Etron GT is slightly more, it's significantly more expensive than this one, and it starts from 110,000. So overall, the RS Etron GT is a much more powerful version than the base spec. It's sportier, but it comes at a much higher cost. And you've got to ask yourself the question, is it worth it? So taking a look at the interior, it's very, very similar to the RS Etron GT, and it does have that extremely nice luxury feel. As I said, the seats are different. You don't get the RS seats. You get much more, I guess, standard base, but they are extremely comfortable. You don't get the carbon fiber, but inside it pretty much is the same. Nice flat bottom steering wheel with the regen here to increase your regen braking. Very familiar screen, climate control in the center, which is all button based, which is great. You get your different drive select modes, so you get efficiency, comfort, and dynamic. Center console, all piano black, which is great, although it is a magnet for fingerprints, and 2 cup holders, as well as some storage down here. Looking at the back, I've got the dog seat in there at the moment, but plenty of space at the back with a very nice panoramic sunroof. And yeah, look, rear passengers, although it's only going to be a couple of them, they will have a good time. And leg room is pretty good considering the fact that that seat is pretty much all the way back. Right, let's stick her in drive. Let's go for a little spin. It is nippy, isn't it? I'll tell you what, for a 2.3 ton car, this car absolutely shifts, but my word, do you feel its weight. Now look, I've lived with this Audi e-tron GT for closing in on a month now. I specifically asked Audi, I really wanted to spend some time living with the car, because, particularly with an EV. I know I've got an EV at home, but this is a specific type, you know, it's a luxury EV, it's big, it's bulky, it hasn't got the greatest range, and could I live with it for everyday use, you know? And the simple answer is yes, it is very easy to live with, but it does come with some challenges. I think the first one I will talk about, I'll call it out straight away. I have no idea where Audi get their WLTP range from, because there is no way, in my opinion, that this will do like close to 300 miles. It just, on a full charge, this will show like 230. So either, you know, the battery has taken a beating already and it's losing on its charge cycles, but I've never seen anything more than that. But to be fair, look, 230, or let's be honest, in this weather in the cold, it's a little bit less than that. 230 is plenty for an all-round, you know, a decent sized round trip. I always look at kind of my furthest journey is kind of like my home to like Stansted Airport and back, and can I do that, Stansted Airport being around about, you know, 70 miles, so 140 mile round trip, can I do that comfortably without having to sit in the slow lane to save charge and not have any range anxiety? And I can do that in this thing. It's easy, it really, really is. In terms of its luxury and its comfort and its seating position, look, I haven't got a bad thing to say about its comfort for me. It's very, very comfortable. It's very, very premium. In terms of, as an overall car, it's lovely. It's really, really nice. I love sitting in here. I really enjoy driving it. But when you start to kind of push on the border of dynamics and, you know, do you enjoy driving this car fast? I wouldn't say so. It kind of like gets to the point where after you've done a few launches, etc., the novelty wears off relatively quickly, if I'm completely honest with you. But it is very good because it does get you out of an awful lot of sticky situations, and for what it is a very, very nice thing. Although 80 odd grand is a lot of money, but all new cars nowadays just seem to be going through the roof. I feel like all manufacturers have taken inflation and the costs of parts, and it has absolutely skyrocketed the price. And I'm hoping that when inflation comes down and cost of goods comes down, we start to see some of these prices come back down a bit. But the reality is, I doubt it. But see that instant torque, 600 odd Newton meters of torque. And this is the base model. This is the e-tron GT, and I've driven the RS Etron GT. And do I notice a significant amount of difference? If I'm completely honest with you, not a huge amount, because the beauty with electric power is it's just go. And this gives you so much to really mess with your senses, that even though the RS Etron GT has another 100 PS on top of it, and it will do 0 to 62 miles per hour in a second quicker, this is plenty. You know, you don't need the RS Etron GT. However, in terms of, like I said, the seats that you get in the RS Etron GT, they're so much nicer in my opinion. These are comfy, but in terms of the way it looks, the RS seats look so much better. I also like the diffuser, I like the styling on the RS Etron GT, I like the bigger wheels. But is that worth an extra 25-30 grand? Probably not. Now, I talked about its weight coming out every now and again, and you do notice bits of understeer, like here. Look at this. Wow, I mean, it's a bit of a barge every now and again. It does find its limit at, you know, don't get me wrong, like taking corners, it's nice to steer. You know, it's very easy. It's quite agile, but it finds its limit pretty quickly, in my opinion. And yes, the RS variant is probably a little bit better because it's got a lower ride height. It's not massively different in my opinion, if I'm honest with you. Now, what about the kind of living with element of this car and the RS variant? Because they're basically the same car, aren't they? It's just one's got a more powerful motor, but the battery is the same. Now, I think this is where the UK energy prices have really kind of caused, brought into question the value for money of EVs nowadays. And don't get me wrong, it's still always going to be cheaper than a petrol car. But the convenience of a petrol car, such as you're never going to have to wait 30 minutes for a pump at a petrol station unless there's some kind of fuel strike going on. You're never going to really have any petrol anxiety because there's fuel pumps everywhere. And I know the EV network is getting there, but it's still, I think we're just not there yet. And more people are buying into this, or being forced into buying EVs. You know, the whole ULEZ rubbish. If you live in London, for those who aren't based in the UK, ULEZ is the ultra low emission zone. So that's basically meant that a lot of the older cars, such as anything below 2005 for a petrol car, and anything really below 2015 for a diesel, means that you can, from August, you're not really going to be able to drive them anywhere near London or within the M25, well, the area within the M25, which means that nowadays, you know, it's almost like people are really pushing you to go EV, which I get it, and it makes sense for London areas, but if the infrastructure isn't there, it makes it extremely difficult. And then you start to look at the prices. Now, prices are really interesting because, yes, having a wall charger at home is always going to be beneficial. I know, you know, my tariff, I pay like 24 pence, I think, per kilowatt hour, which I think is reasonable. Yes, you could go for like Octopus Energy with low rates between midnight and 4, but it increases your daytime charge. So your home appliances, they cost more to run, so it kind of balances out. But this car at home, if I charge it from 0 to 100%, bear in mind this is a kind of 90 odd kilowatt hour battery, 83 kilowatt hour usable, will cost me around £23 to charge. Like £23 to charge, £23 for 200 miles is basically what I'm getting from this at home, which I think is all right. It's good, don't get me wrong, that's value for money. It's when you start to need to charge this outside of home where it becomes a problem, because you know, look at some of these energy tariffs, or sorry, some of these superchargers, because that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the convenience, aren't you? And when you start to look at a supercharger, right, like a 250 kilowatt hour supercharger, the prices go up. You know, my local Tesla supercharger, I like to use that as the kind of the base rate, and because I'm not subscribed to the membership, I pay 64 pence per kilowatt hour, and that equates to 62 quid to fill this car up. I've seen superchargers where you have to pay 77 pence per kilowatt hour, and that equates to 70 odd quid. 70 quid, and on top of that you've got to wait 25-30 minutes to charge the car. I don't really know if that's worth it, but we're talking about EV network again, and I think that's it. I know it's really important. If I pull it back from EV network and just talk about the car, because I think the car is very, very good. It is a really nice car. It's very, very premium. It's very punchy. The only negatives around it, I think, because it's so heavy, the battery drains extremely quickly. The speed, 152 mile an hour limited, is more than enough. You're not going to need any more. You're not ever going to be able to hit that on the UK roads. The performance, 4.1 to 62, more than enough. That's all you'll ever need. You've got plenty of space here in the back, plenty of space in the boot. It's comfy, it's really nice. I think if you're just driving one of these as a daily car and not really fussed too much about its performance, great, brilliant. But if you are trying to get the most out of this kind of car, I think you'll start to realise that you'll get to the upper end of the limit relatively quickly because of its weight. It does understeer a bit. Yes, it's four-wheel drive, so it gives you all that grip, but personal preference anyway. I think when I drove the RS Etron GT out on the North Coast 500, I was kind of really excited because I was just hooning it everywhere. But this is the benefit of living with the car. Over time, those novelties wear off and you just accept the car for what it is. And for me personally, I wouldn't buy this car. I wouldn't. You know, you've got to also look at the technology and the battery efficiency. And I look at something like a Tesla Model 3. I know I keep banging on about Tesla, but Tesla Model 3, 80 kilowatt hour battery. So it's, you know, and I think 80 kilowatts, 77 is usable, 80 odd is usable here. This will do 233. The Tesla Model 3 will give you 348, you know, with the same battery. So the battery management, and whether it's the thermal management, whether it's the efficiency, it's so much better on a Tesla, and it still is. And I haven't really seen that many other cars that are matching it yet, if I'm completely honest with you. So in summary, comparing this to the RS Etron GT, I prefer the RS Etron GT. I think it looks nicer, but I don't think it's worth the extra 30 grand. This is a good car. It's a nice cruiser. Its range is not the greatest, and in the winter you'll feel it more. But for everything else, it's very, very, very nice to drive, and I really enjoy it. And I like the creature comforts. I like the adaptive cruise control, all the fun stuff that you get with modern day Audis. It's a good car, but personally, I wouldn't buy one. So I hope you've enjoyed this video comparing the two cars, comparing effectively which one is the better car. Well, they're both just as good as each other, but both extremely expensive, and my own opinion on it and what it's been like to live with this car. So if you did, please smash the like button. Comments are always welcome, and I will see you all very soon on the next video. Take care. Bye bye.